substance abuse or body abuse through the use of substances. This is a paramount issue today. The more affluent our societies have become, the more we seem to have people abusing their bodies with substances. This is, to me, something I have a lot of compassion towards. I've seen it in my life very close and not that close, and then I've been borderline being hooked on something or the other. I think we tend to want to escape ourselves, free from ourselves. I have a prayer that ends, let us not fall into fear and free us from ourselves. And that's paraphrasing the prayer that ends with, let us not fall into despair or sin, or free us from sin. Let us not fall into temptation and free us from sin. I'm saying let us not fall into fear and free us from ourselves. Because when we fall in fear, we can manifest anger and greed and self-deception. And freeing from ourselves is something that we may seek religiously, philosophically, ethically, as a community, to escape the bounds of the self and grow into a more unlimited self or infinite self, as I called it somewhere else. But then there's also the need to escape the self when we are overwhelmed by ourselves. Escape problems, escape fears, escape bounds, even escape tiredness, if that makes any sense, by abusing our bodies further. I do have a lot of compassion and respect for people who abuse their bodies with substances, because I think they are on the right track, trying to escape the self. But there are other ways to escape the self that preserve our health and are truly fulfilling. Because substance, we have, most of us, experience that is unending, it's never enough. You know it's a problem when it's never enough. You start drinking that bottle of wine and then you go for 2 glasses and you think half a bottle and then you drink the full bottle. And I have stopped there most of the time, but a few times I have gone beyond that, and then it gets really fuzzy, and there's a lot more you can take and a lot more damage you can make to your own body and mind through that. My father was an alcoholic, and so was my grandfather, his father. He drank himself to death, although he spent the last 2 months of his life in the hospital without alcohol, which was even more suffering. I saw delirious tremens firsthand. in him and other patients in the same ward. He was a very healthy man, died just short of 80, could have gone much longer with his strength if he hadn't abused his body so much. And I could see why my father wanted to escape the limitations. There was so much more he could have done in his life and he couldn't. And as a good drunk, as a good person with a problem, he didn't think he was an alcoholic. He thought it was a way of socializing. Although he drank a lot alone, and he thought his own father had been a true drunk because he wasted his salary hopping through bars or getting robbed at the end of all that drinking just on payday, and the family would go hungry then. But Dad also abused himself and lost money and sought friendships through alcohol. I met once this man, both of us were post-surgery. No, actually I was going into surgery because of a broken hip. I spent one night in the hospital with a broken hip, waiting for surgery the next morning. And that evening they brought in this man who had surgery on his back. They had fused and vertebrae in his back to diminish back pain. And we were both on painkillers and talk, and he was older than myself, I know by a lot, and he was a school principal, a retired school principal, retired early because of health issues. I had many surgeries to fix, between quotation marks, fix his back, his knees, his hip. And here he was again for more back surgery. We talk about education and other interesting things. Everything went well until night came. And then I heard this man scream in a way I have rarely heard. Screams of pain. He was in deep pain and screaming, demanding more painkillers, and the nurses were shocked because he was on the highest dose they could give him, and they would go back and forth and call doctors, and while we were waiting for some doctor to show up, I asked the man. I found out that he was taking painkillers all the time, even more than prescribed, because of his back pain and body pain. So what they had given him after surgery wasn't having an effect, because he was used to that level of dosage, and he needed a lot more and something different. And finally a doctor came and I told him what was happening, and they gave him something different and in mega doses, which was risky, but that way that knocked out the man. But no, not after, before he was in deep pain for maybe 2 hours or more. How do we get there? had us retired school principal get there. This was in Detroit, by the way, and the Midwest in the United States suffered greatly the opioid pandemic, opioid abuse, body abuse through the use of opioids, and that got started a lot in towns like Dayton, Ohio, where this car manufacturer, a lot of opioid abuse happened with blue-collar workers who have body pain from their extremely hard work, and they were prescribed painkillers to make it through, and then they abused that. And, how do we get there? How? Well, I think as a society we have pushed each other to such extremes that people want to escape the self. So we drink and we drug ourselves, and to avoid the pain of being with ourselves. It's not easy. Look at me here in this remote location for over a month, no alcohol, no coffee, nothing to find easy pleasure, escape. It's hard to be confronted with the self and the universe and the reality of this abyss with a trillion trees. So let's have compassion for everybody who has to resort to substances to escape themselves, and then they suffer physically and mentally and spiritually. How do I address this? Well, let's start at a very personal level and ask yourself, is there anything that you couldn't live without for one day? Alcohol, coffee, sugar. Sugar is another substance that we get hooked on, and this is legal. And the likes of Coca-Cola push sugar on us for profit, and then we have diabetes and many other problems, and now this pandemic seems to be targeting specifically people with diabetes and overweight by the abuse of sugar. So can you live 24 hours? Is there anything you can go 24 hours that you cannot go 24 hours without? Can you go 24 hours without an alcoholic drink, without coffee, without sugar? I know it can be hard, but I'm saying, can you do it? Can you go 1 week? Can you go a month? I think that's the test. Go a month without substances you depend on. We should all have a cleansing period, at least once a year. Go a month without alcohol, coffee. Choose a month. The beginning of the year could be good after all the holidays and the abuse we already do there. Go January, mid-January to mid-February, or go February, which is a shorter month. But test yourself. Don't say you can do it, sure I can do it. No, that's already a sign of a problem. Denial, that's so typical of abusing our bodies with substances. Oh yes, I can quit anytime. Well, quit. Go 1 month. Cold turkey. Oh, and I haven't even talked about the smoking. So drop tobacco, alcohol, sugar, coffee. It's not easy. And then silent retreats where one is removed from all those substances, and that's one of the harder things for most people. Some people actually go to retreats to kick habits, and that's really hard. I don't think it works most of the time, because those are two different things. It's like driving a motorcycle to learn to swim. By example. So go 1 month clean once a year. That will reduce the substance consumption 10% across the board. If you cannot do it, seek help. Recognize that there's a problem, but recognize, have present that it's nothing really wrong, that you are just trying to escape. You are like many of us escaping the self. But there are other ways to do that won't harm you. As a society, we had to take away the lure of smoking, alcohol. There's a lot of advertisement for alcohol and sugar. Well, sugar is not even addressed as a problem most of the time. Smoking, I smoked many years. It was the most difficult thing to quit the smoking of all the things I had quit. God, nicotine is addictive. The most difficult thing. Many tries and failures, many times. Restart. I finally did it with the coming of the year 2001, the end of the year 2000. I went cold turkey, quit everything at the same time. I was moving from Europe to America, and I think it was around late January, and with the changing of continents, I dropped everything, all tobacco, alcohol, chocolate, coffee, sugar. And actually, by doing it all, it was easier than just trying to quit the smoking, because I would have a drink instead of smoking, and then I got into that suppression of the self that needed something else to feed it. And then many of you know the cycle. You drink at night and end the night smoking, wake up with coffee and throw chocolate somewhere in there. And I could spend hours in the evening doing one thing after the other or simultaneously. So cleanse once a year. If you cannot do it, address it. I'm not saying quit everything. No, it's okay. I'm gonna go back to coffee, maybe alcohol, but I won't go back to sugar. That's poison. But I will cleanse. What I call cleansing once a year. Show myself I'm not following the steps of my dad and my grandfather. Smoking, I will never go back to it. I don't want to ever experience the almost impossibility of quitting. I have smoked pot. I did opioids with medical advice, and it didn't work for me. My mind already is like a constant animation, and being on opioids made it like Looney Tunes. And then the withdrawal was horrid. I was on a non-opioid painkiller, but it was basically a synthetic opioid chemistry. They dare to call it non-opioid, I guess, because it doesn't come from poppy seeds. But I wouldn't touch that because I feel it's like tobacco, nicotine, that is really hard to shake. I don't think nicotine, opioids are things that you can do recreationally and quit a month once a year. Although granted, some people have different levels of engagement with these substances. There are people who are social smokers. They smoke a cigarette with friends and they don't smoke for a week. They just do it on weekends. Great for them. They are rather unique. I'm not like that. I have a propensity to get hooked or want more or something. I have a little bit of the chocolate and more and more and more. I have one cigarette and more until I smoke a pack in a day, and I have a glass of wine until I have a full bottle. I think the majority of us are like that. So let's start with something as basic as freeing ourselves from substance, and yes, seeking escaping the self, but in a different way. Become infinite, please. Be one with everything, but not by falling asleep drunk. I know the feeling, the buzz.